Please stand if you're able.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk. Here. Councilmember Peak.
Here.
Councilmember Newsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Here.
And Mayor Verbo.
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. If you are attending in person or listening to the city council meeting tonight through one of our many avenues, welcome. We appreciate you following city government. We will move first to our consent calendar. Consent calendar consists of items that are considered routine and non-controversial by city staff and will be acted upon by a single action of the city council unless otherwise requested by an individual council member for separate consideration. We will now open it for public comment for any item on the consent calendar. Okay, please approach the podium if you would like to comment on an item on the consent calendar, items A1 through 4. Okay, seeing no one approach, I will bring it back to the council, see if any council member has any question or would like to pull an item from the consent calendar. If not, we will take a motion on the consent calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Funk and a second by Councilmember Peak. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes.
Councilmember Peak.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Yes.
Mayor Verbo.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Okay, with that, we will proceed next to updates from our city manager, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Appreciate that. I have several items here. First of all, as a weekend highlight, the Party for the Planet was this weekend. The weather was perfect. Beautiful day to learn about amazing wildlife and how to preserve it. We had 18 organizations at the zoo, some for the first time, so you can see many of those. We had a good, steady turnout, and people enjoyed the engagement. So, great day at the zoo to honor our planet. Next is El Camino Real project. So I give these updates frequently. A lot is happening now. Between Highway 41 and Traffic Way, there's intermittent detours as we put the pavers in the crosswalks and do final touches. You can see that the street has been paved. Between Colony Cinemas, Huckleberries, and Traffic Way, we'll be continuing installing the pavers and plants and the pathways. Between Traffic Way and Rosario Avenue will include concrete work on curbs, planters, and landscaping. There'll be narrow lanes and traffic delays, but access will remain open. We're very, very close south of Traffic Way to having a fully functional street, just short weeks. And so looking forward to, I actually saw a couple cars parked in areas today. There will not be a formal, okay, you can use the street now. We will actually just kind of have a rolling use of the street as we complete areas because we know how important it is to get El Camino functioning fully. And so we're very, very close to functionality south of Traffic Way. And then the project being, done in just a matter of, 6 to 8 weeks. So we're really close and appreciate the community's patience. It's looking terrific. As a matter of fact, I have a little drone view that you can see of the project. This is kind of interesting. Here you go. And you can kind of see from the air what it looks like and how far we've come. It's amazing to see the real thing when we had that cartoon one when we started. There it is. So you can really see how far we've come and how very close we are to being functional. So those parking spots you can see are available. The cones will be pulled here shortly. One of the other next big activities will be striping the street. I think that will really help when that is done. And that's scheduled for late next week or the following week. So that'll be really nice as well. So anyway, we're about done, which is great. Next, citywide yard sale. This Saturday is the citywide yard sale. It's time to find treasures, April 26th from 8 to 2 all throughout the community. This is your opportunity to find that perfect gift. Yeah, or get rid of stuff. Okay. Next, waste drop-off and repair and shredding is happening right now. So this is the week now through Saturday. This is a new location at 3360 La Cruz Way off Ramada Drive. This is over by 10 City. No more waiting in line for a voucher. You can show up, but make sure you bring an ID and a copy of your waste management bill. So it's really important. You can pull right in and dump all your shredding, waste, everything else you have, scrap metal, household waste, paper products, etc. Great opportunity. So make sure you take advantage of this. It is a service we pay for. And then ramping up on slide 7, we have our 9th annual Tamale Festival coming. It is May 2nd and 3rd. So that is next, not this, but next weekend. Always a wonderful time. We have Fiesta Friday on May 2nd from 5:30 to 8:30. But that's going to be combined with a sip and shop and a sneak peek with the tamale vendors. And then the big event, 11 to 7 on Saturday, May 3rd. 30 tamale vendors, 100 other vendors, dancing, live music, contests. And so really it's a terrific event. And we know people are looking forward to that. So I'll ask for questions. I will say as an aside that I think I talked just as an update on the safety facility. You just approved the purchase of modular units. We do have a license agreement from the state of California in hand. There's a few things we've asked to reword. So we could sign the license agreement now. So that is in hand. But there's a few things we're trying to make a little clearer. And I received the final contract from F&H Construction, talked to their president today. He intends to sign it tomorrow, as will I. So we are big moments on our safety facilities, big progress. So we're looking forward to moving forward on that. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Does any member of the council have any questions for city manager? Okay. I was going to make note that we've lost a couple of city employees, former city employees. Jim Campana, who just recently retired from after over 30 years of employment with the city, has passed away. Sad news for the city family. And he was always a hard worker and a good person to be around. And I'm sure he's being sorely missed, not just by his family, but everybody here in the city family. And also, I meant to mention last time that our first city fire chief, Mike Hicks, had passed away. And he was the fire chief when the fire district became part of the city. And so he was our first Atascadero city fire chief and was that through 1992. And I remember Mike fondly, and I believe the department either just had or will have, there will be a ceremony for him or a memorial for him. So
there will be a ceremony this Sunday, Lake Pavilion at 3 p.m.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Okay. With that, we will proceed on to community forum. The community forum is reserved for persons wanting to address the city council on any matter not on the agenda, but over which the council has jurisdiction. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing matters not on the agenda, but the council may at its discretion ask staff to contact a speaker regarding an issue raised during community forum or to answer a quick question. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and please approach the podium and state your name for the record if you'd like to speak during community forum. Okay. Seeing no one coming forward to speak this evening on community forum, we will close community forum and move on to our next item, which is a management report regarding proposed wastewater rate increases. And I will turn that over to Mr. Nick DeBar, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor Burpo. I'm going to have Mr. Betts, Public Works Analyst, present the report tonight.
Thank you, Public Works Director DeBar. We're just going to load up the presentation real quick. Okay, we're in business. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, we are here tonight with the proposed wastewater rate increases. Just a little background. Wastewater services are considered an essential community investment that helps ensure public health, economic prosperity, and maximizes land use potential and reasonable development and expansion for businesses, residents, and other community buildings. Sewer parcels are generally within the urban core of our city. And within this area, there's approximately 5,500 parcels that are served by our sewer system. The remainder of the city's population, if you will, is served by on-site septic tanks. Just the collection alone of wastewater is comprised of approximately 63 miles of gravity sewer pipe, approximately 1,500 manholes, 12 lift or pumping stations, and 7 miles of force main. Dating back to the incorporation of the city, we took over the Atascadero County Sanitation District in 1982. And though there have been upgrades and additions to the collection and treatment plant since that time, primarily that system has remained in place as is. It is considered a stabilization pond treatment system. And unfortunately, these types of systems are no longer permittable or able to be operated or built as a result of the state's regulatory environment. Since that time, the city's population has nearly doubled, and this 45-year-old system is nearly approaching full design capacity. So approximately 5-ish, 6 years ago, the staff presented what's called a wastewater rate analysis to the city council at that time. Before that, the city hadn't actually increased its sewer rates since 1994. So that had been approximately 25 years. And that is quite unusual for cities of our size to not do. At that time, we looked at the analysis, and the council had what I would call the courage and fortitude to adopt it and pursue essentially a 5-year plan to hopefully right-size some of the deficiencies in the revenue in the sewer enterprise fund to help pay ongoing costs in collection, treatment, energy, chemicals, a whole array of costs. That analysis was done again in 2019. I want to go back just 2 years. That's the last time the city actually raised its sewer rates. Again, that is 2 years ago. The city raised, that's the last time the sewer rates were increased. So the city has hired and worked with a consultant to do that same analysis again. That analysis is required by the state anytime a jurisdiction is proposing to do rate increases. That rate analysis looks at a variety of things, collections, treatments, costs, and certainly infrastructure on the horizon. And what that can mean, the impact on the customer base. Some of those key factors, as I mentioned, treatment, energy costs, more importantly, the impacts of state regulations on our treatments, and any critical upgrades and replacement. That analysis, that consultant that did the analysis is here tonight via Zoom. His name's Clayton Tuckfield. He's worked with a number of agencies across the state on very similar analysis, helping cities understand where their needs are and what their needs are going to be and what those impacts are going to be on their customer base. I'm hoping Clayton is on the call and see if he is. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Clayton to go through some of that analysis for council's consideration.
Hopefully you can hear me. Is that true, Ryan?
We can hear you, Clayton.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be able to present the results of our rate analysis tonight. The purpose of this analysis is to evaluate the sufficiency of the revenue being received into the wastewater fund to essentially pay its expenses and its capital improvement needs. Additionally, we want to keep a minimum reserve level in the wastewater fund to provide any unforeseen contingencies that may occur, as well as meet any legal obligations with proposed debt that we're proposing to be financed, or both to be issued to finance some of the capital improvements this evening. And then secondly, our purpose is to develop rates which will generate that revenue to provide the cost of essential wastewater service. Next slide, please. So the components of our rate analysis is to look at the fund's revenue and expenses, look at the city's budget and then project forward the future revenue expenses for the system. We then include that into a wastewater financial plan that would also include the capital improvement spending and debt financing of certain facilities, and look at maintaining that reserves that I spoke about at certain target levels. And then lastly, develop what's called cost of service rates that will generate the revenue that we've identified in the wastewater financial plan. Next slide. So why are the rates changing? Costs continue to increase. Our O&M expenses continue to increase. Our employees would like to have raises every year. Electricity costs are continuing to rise, chemical costs, and all the other essential operating expenses of the wastewater system. The city's also identified certain capital needs. These include replacements as well as improvements, and most importantly, the treatment plant expansion. As I also mentioned, we want to maintain cash at certain target reserve levels. That includes operating and capital, and provide the debt service coverage ratio. Now, that's a kind of a special ratio that investors look at when they buy the bonds of the city issuing that debt. Also, provide financial support for the treatment plant expansion. It will have certain operation and maintenance expenses, so your total will be increasing over the next few years, as well as the debt service payments associated with the financing, which is all both paid for by the revenues coming into the wastewater fund. Now, as I mentioned, the city has identified certain capital needs. This is what we identified for the city going forward for the next 6 years, actually. On the left-hand side, you'll see the actual project we're discussing, and then the dollar amounts to be spent in the years as we move across this table. Probably the most important item to look at would be the last two lines on here showing the wastewater treatment plant design and the wastewater treatment plant construction cost. So design dollars are spent initially, and then construction begins after that. And I think you can see the magnitude of the dollars once we get out to year 4 and 5. Things start to get quite large. Next slide, please. So bringing all this together, we present the wastewater financial plan on the left-hand side, and then the end-of-year cash, projected cash on the right-hand side. Now, what you should see from this is when we start to issue that debt in year 4 and 5, the numbers go up significantly here. So the debt service will be a major component of the cost of the wastewater system. The red line indicates how we would have to adjust revenue to be able to not only meet those expenses and the debt service, but as well provide for additional reserves into the fund. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see how the different fund balance changes as we move through the years to meet the target level we've identified. Now, what we're discussing here tonight is increases of 18.5% for 2 years. And that is because the city's in the early design stages for the major improvements to the treatment plant. And we're looking to obtain more accurate cost estimates as we move forward during that 2-year period. So I think the plan is to come back in 2 years and update this study based on what occurs over the next 2 years as far as design and construction costs. Next slide. So once we've identified the revenue we need to have coming in, we then perform what's called a wastewater cost of service. And so we're designing rates essentially to recover the costs based on the contribution of wastewater flow and strength to the system. So to do that, we have what's called an equivalent dwelling unit methodology. And that's where we define one EDU as the wastewater flow and strength of a single family dwelling unit. Then all of our other customer types are a proportion to that EDU based on their flow and strength. So we end up with having a number of multiples or a number of EDUs that are assigned to each different customer group. And we'll present that to you in shortly. Next slide, please. So these are the results we would implement for July 1, 2025. On the left-hand side, you see the various customer groups. The next column is the EDU multiple, and the next column is the unit of measure, and then the charge we would implement going forward. So just as an example, single family right now at the top line, the current charge is $48.15. That would increase to $57.06 per dwelling unit. And then if you look at the next few lines, a condo, mobile home, each one of those represents a 0.75 or point some multiple of a single family dwelling unit. And that likewise occurs down to the rest of customer classes. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this would be a bill comparison of the city's current bill, its proposed bill in relation to other bills for the agencies listed on the left-hand side. Now, what to keep in mind with this is a snapshot in time, meaning that I performed this survey in February. Now, obviously, your rates will continue to increase as we move through a financial plan, but also every other agencies will increase as we move forward as well. So just by looking at this, you're in the lower third, let's just say, and you will stay in the lower third as of one more year with that increase. I might also point out here that some of these other agencies have already constructed recent facilities. At the top of the list, you'll see some of those that I think you'll recognize as they've been in probably the newspapers, having those facilities constructed. And when they do that, their rates obviously increase to meet that. So at this point, like I said, this is just a snapshot in time comparing your bill to what the other communities are paying right now. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ryan.
Thank you, Clayton. So the Proposition 218 process is a statewide requirement. We as a city adopted a Prop 218 process in 2019 with the original wastewater rate analysis. It requires certain procedures to be followed regarding property-related fee increases proposed by government agencies such as ourselves. The rate increases are subject to what's called a majority protest. That process involves a majority of the parcels subject to the city fee. If a majority, 50% plus one, protests that, it puts certain restrictions on the city to impose that increase. Part of that Prop 218 process involves 45 days of review of a notice. That's included in your agenda packet tonight. That notice will be going to all customers, if you will, of the city's sewer system. And then they have 45 days to review that. And that puts us at a public hearing on June 10th. Next slide. A little bit more detail about the public notice. It's going to look very similar to previous notices sent by the city. It's a 2-page document with some information about why the rates are being proposed to increase, what those would look like and feel like for your kind of average residential and business entity. It also includes on the backside some additional information on how the majority protest works and how folks in the community can provide that protest if they so wish. It includes additional information to our city website to learn more information as well. Next steps. Primarily with council's direction, we would start the Prop 218 process literally tonight. I'd be working on that and working on the mailers, getting those out this week. And then we would reconvene, if you will, on June 10th to hold a public hearing and review the protest results and have council consider new rates at that time. After that, we would work with our county counterparts to ensure that those new rates were part of the property tax roll, which is due on July 15th of this summer. And with that, I'll hand it over to our city manager, Mr. Jim Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. So I wanted to kind of big picture where we're headed and kind of as we wrap up, paint a tough set of decisions we're going to have. You know, I think the wastewater fund faced challenges when we didn't touch it for 25 years. The city inherited a plant in 1980 that has not had any expansion or capability issues in 45 years. By not raising rates for over 25 years, that was good for the ratepayer then. But now we are left with the plant at full capacity, 99% capacity, that is of technology that will not be permitted in California. And so I think rate increases always are tough, especially everything is increasing. So I just want to say that the staff recognizes that. We're asking you to vote on this tonight. We recognize that insurance is increasing, phone bills, electricity. This is a utility as well. Everything is subject to the same impacts. What makes this more challenging as well is that in this state of California, regulatory agencies are forcing us to take a plant that works and upgrade it to full comprehensive secondary treatment. We were mandated to enter into a general permit a couple of years ago to build that plant. So now instead of expanding a plant that we have today for $20 to $30 million, that's a $100 million number. We don't have a choice there. Well, we do. We could do nothing and have the federal government come in and take over the situation at a greater cost. We could face significant environmental fines, or we could sell the plant to a private entity that would charge much more to our residents because there'd be a profit motive there. And so it's still prudent for this council to move forward making these adjustments. So to be very clear, we pained over this 18.5% number. This does not do anything for the collection system. I hate to be a bearer of difficult news, but that's why you see we're asking for 18.5 tonight. And then I'll talk about where we're headed, but as it stands, asking for another 18.5 a year from now. So that's $9 a commercial or business unit today, or a residence a month. And that could be $10 next year. During that process, though, here's what's important, because we know we have to build a new plant. And this rate increase moves us towards having the capacity to borrow to build the new plant and to keep the lights on, to keep the plant running. Again, it does not address the collection system. That said, I know that this is very difficult for all of us to be undergoing this series of increases. I think that we need to immediately, if the council takes this action tonight, begin meeting with apartment owners, business owners, large payers in the system to engage and talk through the challenges before us, what options we have, what options we don't have, and sit with those stakeholders. And I do want to ask the council and your recommendations tonight to permit me to start those meetings and actually form a working group of people to help us work through this, get other smart people in the room to see where we are and why we believe these increases are necessary. And if there are other options over the next year that are discovered, that's why we're not submitting a 5-year plan or anything else, because I believe there are other options. I believe we have a lot of smart people in this community that can sit with me and the staff and try and come up with better options. We must do that because the consistent series of rate increases for years and years and years and years is very difficult. And so we want to do meaningful public outreach and engagement. And that's just not us talking to people. That's sitting at a table, showing charts, looking at costs, looking at financials, rolling up our sleeves and figuring out where we are. So what are some things we can do besides just saying we're raising the rate and that's that? No, that's not acceptable to any of us. We have to look at drawing people into our system. We have a small system, as you saw, 8,300 units, 5,500 connections. That means to build this big plant, we need to look at who else can connect to the system to spread the costs out. The more we can spread the cost, the less impact it has on our existing customers. That's really important. There are other agencies in our area that are in the same boat. They face the same regulatory issues we do. They have similar technology plants. If we can do this together, it will draw down the cost. So if we move forward with this evening, this helps fund that design and those discussions so we can start talking to partners nearby, other state agencies, and other communities about partnerships. We must partner. Doing this on our own is very challenging. 2, we need to continue more so negotiating regulatory impacts on this thing. But to be realistic, we must move to secondary treatment and address the biological, the nutrients and the organics in the wastewater. That is law in California. That ship sailed long ago. That requires secondary treatment. That is very expensive. We still have to talk through how we treat our salts, how we treat other things. And so even if we're able to negotiate regulatory impacts to the Regional Water Board, that may buy us time, that may buy us other technologies, but we need to do that and do that firmly. And we plan to do that this year. We have to have other funding from other agencies. If the state is going to mandate these technologies and force cities like us with the number of ratepayers we have into these types of treatment, they need to be a partner and fund this. And thankfully, they have funded projects like this partially to a quarter, 30%. Prop 4, the new climate bond, has money for water resiliency and water. And so we'll be in Sacramento this week. We're starting those conversations to try and get our share of that state money. Our share, I have past experience working with the federal government on dollars. Now that's challenging right now, but that doesn't mean we can't start talking to the Department of the Interior on some of the resources they have for recycled water facilities. And so that is something we'll do. I think another thing that we would like with your vote this evening is, and I've heard this from members of our business community, is the EDU the fairest way? Is it fair that a retail business is 1 unit and a house is 1 unit and a restaurant is 4 units? Or should there be a different way? I think if we're going into a successive period of looking at increases to afford a new plant, and we will have to address our collection system, we must meet with our community to talk about the fairest way to spread the cost of wastewater treatment. So if the council moves us forward tonight, we will also begin those discussions immediately this summer and into the fall, proposing options for how we spread the cost of wastewater. I think it's very important for the community to hear. We're not just saying we're raising rates tough. No, we need to get partners. We need to find other dollars. We need to dialogue about the fairest way to recover these costs and then preparing for an additional increase next year. So that's where we're headed. Based on all of that, when we have better design costs, we know what partners we have. We've identified some outside dollars. We've looked at how we charge for rates that's fair. We have some community buy-in on that. Then we would come forward with a longer term stability for the wastewater fund through a longer term analysis. And that would be 2 to 3 years from now. So that's where I would like to suggest we're headed. The vote tonight gets us that way. I think to address a question I may get, why now? Why can't we dialogue about this for a longer period of time? We started this study in February when we started to crystallize on the technology we needed and where we are. I think we were surprised at how expensive wastewater plants had gotten. We were surprised at just costs of things. And so when we looked at that and we pushed back, the staff tried to come up with the least amount of increase we could have, but not losing a year. So we'd have a 40% increase next year. I mean, we need to start accumulating these dollars so we can be in a position to borrow money. You heard Mr. Tuckfield, when we go to the market to borrow money, you have to have enough revenue that you're collecting to even be in the market to borrow the money. It's called a coverage ratio. And so we need to start building up to that. And so staff really put our heads together the past 6 weeks to come up with something that we think is as palatable as it can be for the community and our ratepayers, but then talk about where we're headed. And so that's why we're here tonight. Because our sewer fees are collected on the property tax bill, we do have a hard deadline of July 15th. 2/18 sets a 45-day process. So when you start backing that up, that puts us to tonight and why we need to act tonight. So I just wanted to kind of give a global thing. Again, we're really in this spot because we didn't collect fees for increases for 25 years. The state regulatory environment has made it very difficult, and we have a small set of ratepayers relative to the plant we have to build. But I know we can continue to find solutions. This community is very smart. So with that, I think we'll wrap up our report. Our recommendation is to administer the 218 majority protest process and send out notice immediately and set a public hearing for June 10th for the council's consideration of the rate increases. And that concludes our presentation. We can answer questions. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I will start on my left, see if council members have questions for staff. Councilmember Peak.
Yeah, I just wanted the staff to clarify on the report, on the packet. This is considering 1 year of increases with a 45-day notice. Although it says years a couple times, it says, I just want to clarify that the public that it says 2 years, it says years on the last slide. Please
So
clarify.
the action tonight and the notice is 1 year, one increase, $9 per unit. That is the act that the public will be hearing over the 45 days and the council will taking. I'm just trying to be transparent, looking into the future, saying that won't be enough. We'll have to do this again next year. But for tonight, your action is 1 year, $9, the 18.5%. Good question.
But the dialogue can start, so.
Right.
So we're not, you're saying dire numbers. It's really unfortunate, that nothing was done for, 8 increases over 45 years, 5 of which in the last 7 years. And then now, all the regulatory, issues. It's just an unfortunate position that puts a lot of impossibility on a lot of people. When you look at other, I just want to, I'm just going to say, you look at, I know people in Osos just with all that increase that had to leave Osos, right, on a fixed income. And I just want to make sure that we have representation from not just business owners in this dialogue process, but we have homeowners. There's a lot of intelligent people who live here, retired or working, that could be part of this process. And I know that that's probably open opportunity for them as well if they want to throw their hat in the ring to try to jump on this bear. But it's an impossible decision to make, increasing any sort of cost. But I don't have any further questions. I just want to make sure that the 1 year is really 1 year, figure something out. If not, we're kind of kicking the can by doing 1 year increase. But if we don't do 1 year increase, it's going to cost more. 100%. Not 100%, but it will cost more, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you. The current chart that we have, the service charges, the EDU things that shows all the different customer types. How long is that? When was that created? And has it ever been changed since it was first used?
It's a good question. So the table with the user classification, that was established in, from my records, 1993-ish, 92, 93 timeframe. So it's not all inclusive. And that's one of the reasons we want to revisit that table and make sure that's still the most equitable, fairest way to charge wastewater rates.
And what kind of data do we have that would be able to compare the use, say, a single family residence versus what a bar is 1.5 versus a 1 for, how is the data, what data do you use to be able to determine the multiple for different customer types?
Sure, that's a great question. And there's 2 things. One, based on flow, how much sewage each of those uses contribute each day on average. And there's a lot of data on that. And there's the second would be a strength of the wastewater. So for instance, everything kind of goes back to a single family home or residential, because that's very common and the most common, I guess, strength and flow factor. So that's always set to 1 and everything's based on that. So a bar or like a restaurant has much higher solids going into the sewage, or like a bakery or even a brewery has, yeast and other things that make it much more difficult to treat at the wastewater. So all those, there's a lot of that goes on. But a volumetric analysis would be performed where we get records from the water company, not individual records. They won't release those, but say, give us all the bars in town, give us the consumption that they have, all the single family homes. And then we'd hire a consultant to do that analysis for us.
Okay, great. And just one more question. So as the city manager mentioned, if, when we get to a point where we're going to do a new system or upgrade it or whatever it is, to what degree we have to, connecting to other areas, say Templeton sharing the cost and whatnot, is this new partnership, if you will it include homes, whether in Atascadero, the county part of Atascadero, or Templeton, homes that are not currently connected to a sewer system? Or is it only going to be homes and businesses that are currently connected to a system, instead of not having septic system and now going to this? How far will we go?
Yeah, I think it would be existing customers. So if, for instance, a neighboring community, if we were able to strike a partnership with them, treat their wastewater, we would probably take on all their existing connections.
In Atascadero, it wouldn't be beneficial to maybe have some roads or some areas of Atascadero that are currently septic to, I know it's a matter of trenching up the roads. I mean, it's a lot of work, but would it be beneficial to at least find some that we can connect to? Because like you see, the more we can get on the system, maybe it waters the cost down a little bit.
Sure. We identified those 5 areas and we call them the LAMP areas with the local agency management plan, those septic areas that we were looking to convert. It is very expensive to trench sewer and build lift stations to serve those areas. We've actually been trying to get grant money for that to do the work. Actually did an income survey in one neighborhood. We had failed short on the number of participants, but we're still following up on that with the state. So yeah, we continue to seek that and expand our customer base.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Funk.
Yes, thank you. So we've had some extensive discussions behind the scenes about this, and that's going to continue. So I'm not going to get into all that detail tonight. I know that right now we have a lot more questions than we've got answers. The city is about to send every sewer customer that notice announcing that the expected total cost of modernizing and expanding our wastewater treatment facility or the water reclamation facility has risen to about $100 million. Plus, there's the new information that there are major repairs needed in our old lift stations and in 100-year-old sewer pipes that could add another $73 million in expected costs, right? Okay, so those are really jaw-dropping numbers and they're going to be really hard on this community. So my first question is, my understanding is that at this point, it is not certain that we're actually going to have, the costs really are going to be that high, that nothing can be done about that. And it's definitely not certain that current Atascadero customers are going to have to shoulder all that load. Is that true?
I hope that's true. I hope that we are successful, yes, in getting grants from the state of California, especially through our representatives. So that is true. And there are communities nearby that have similar or worse situations than ours that we could partner with. So I certainly hope that's true, which is why I don't have us taking a 5-year look. The $100 million number, we did invite our consultant from Water Systems Consulting, Dylan's here. If you want to have a discussion about current costs, looking at what was built in Morro Bay, what was built in Los Osos, and looking at those costs today to what we're going to need, that number's probably not 70 million or 80 million, and is it 105 or is it 90? We just wanted to throw a number at you. If you want more information, he's here and could speak to that, but that number is probably pretty close, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. But it is, that is a fixed cost for a system. And if we were able to recruit more customers, while there would be some additional costs associated with serving those customers, they also would pick up a share of the fixed costs, right?
Absolutely.
So everybody's piece of that.
Yes. I think that has to be a solution that we are pursuing other customers, other connections, and other dollars from other agencies. You're right, Councilmember.
Okay. And will a portion of the rate increase that we're talking about tonight go towards getting us better answers to those questions?
Yes, perhaps staff can put the chart up that showed our capital plan. I think this is helpful for the council to see. And you'll see in that chart, it's coming up here, where this money goes. I think it's so the WWTP design, 600,000 and then 3.5 and 25, 26. Those dollars are answering a lot of those questions. That's for our consultant from Water Systems Consulting about who could hook up to the system, how that hook up. Are there better technologies helping us prepare applications with the data we have to get grant funding? A lot of that will be covered in those dollars. And then you can see in the, where's the collection, repair, and construction, you can see we are budgeting a more robust amount of $300-something thousand a year. For repairs, if we're not investing in expansion or new, we're anticipating greater repair. So this is to be very clear where the dollars go. You can see it right then and there. And then there are modifications we need to make to a couple of stations at a minimum in 27, 28, and 28, 30, you can see on top. If the council has any further questions about these things, we're happy to answer that as well. But yes, council member, that is where there's dollars to get those answers.
Okay, and is the flow monitoring study something that will help us identify places where stormwater is getting into the sanitary sewer system so that we're not having to design all that extra capacity to handle storm surges that shouldn't be coming into the system in the first place, right?
Yes, that's correct. So the line 2 and 3 on this chart, flow monitoring, that's flow monitoring into the treatment plant so we can get a good idea what's coming in. And then the collection system I&I study, that's inflow and infiltration. So that would be looking at the collection pipes and seeing if, there's a broken pipe that's has groundwater that's pouring into the system that we don't need to treat. Or, is there somebody's roof drain tied into their, their lateral or something like that. So this would be evaluating a lot of those. That needs to be done during the winter time when it rains, because we have flow meters in the manholes, certain junction manholes, and then we'll be able to see how much they'll spike, during rain events and during the winter, winter months. So that's when that study takes place. But the flow monitoring into the plant, line 2 there would be kind of a continual thing. But winter is also another time we monitor.
Okay, and where in here do we look at things like, can we significantly reduce the cost of the plant by doing some conservation technologies, like having people, reroute their, washing machine water into their toilets so that it's reused twice on site, that kind of thing?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think that's something we should look at and promote more of that, because it is allowed per the building code, my understanding. And maybe encouraging people to do more of that and recycling their water on site at their own homes would be great.
Okay, so we would be able to look at whether that would be a cost-effective element of the design of the system as a whole, to not have to build capacity build as much capacity there.
Correct. Yeah. And I believe that's something that's part of our outreach program. We can certainly talk to folks and homeowners and businesses and see what things they can do on their own to help reduce some of that flow to the treatment plant.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into a lot of that detail later, because I know we haven't, and that's going to be a little nibble off of 100 million, not 20 or 30 million off of 100 million. But before we go down, and I know tonight that we're just talking about 1 year, that's $8.91 for your typical household a month. But before we go down a pathway that has those really huge cost numbers that we're looking at, some portion of which is going to be borne by our current residents and businesses, people really need to know we're going to do this right. And that means we've got to work on some things. And I think these are consistent with what you're doing, but I want to go through, what I see here, that we need to look at every option to reduce the cost, to share the cost with others, to get somebody else to pay a piece of that cost, like the feds or the state, to finance the costs efficiently, to distribute the costs equitably, and to find some way to help residents and businesses who are really going to struggle to pay these additional costs. Because we don't want to be driving people out of their homes with the cost to handle our waste. That's crazy. So for those things, can you, and I can go through one at a time, are those things commitments that the city can make to us tonight that you will, as you're using this money to better understand the questions that we have to address, that you will commit to these things? Will you commit to seeking options to reduce the cost of the system?
So I believe that answer would be yes. And the commitment I can share with you is that we will be aggressively pursuing regional partnerships. We'll be pushing on the regional board as best we can. Starting tomorrow in Sacramento, we'll be meeting with our lobbyist about dollars from the state of California for wastewater. And yes, I would say by July, we will have a very meaningful engagement. I've already talked to a few people in this room about serving on an advisory committee to look into this and help us really address the equity issues and how we pay this. And if we get to a point where enough's enough on rate increases, we understand that, then what other options are there? Again, selling the system, not doing something, dealing with a catastrophic event that's going to be more expensive. These are the realities, unfortunately, this city is placed in at this time. But I can commit to you that we'll do those things. And that's why I wanted to have that slide there. I appreciate
Okay,
the
so that-
affirmation.
So you'll commit to working to reduce the cost, to share the costs with others, other entities, try to get to, the feds and the state to kick in grants or other support to finance the cost efficiently, to look at how we distribute the cost so that we can do that equity, which, including relooking at that, 1990 study that's now running things, and to bring back some options to this council on how we might help residents and businesses for whom these additional costs are a bridge too far.
Yes, those are the things we must do.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Newsom.
Thank you. I just have a few questions here. So as we're looking at this, these rate increases are only going to affect property owners, not the renters that are consuming, correct?
Yes, these are rates that are collected on property taxes.
So if a property owner wanted to take their property tax bill, they could take the Atascadero sewer on there, divide it by 12, and that tells them what rate of EDU they should be at.
Yes.
Okay. And then we're looking at doing replacements of lift station 3 and 5. I believe in the last 6 years, we did 2. What are the status of the other lift stations we have?
We have 12 lift stations. So we redid lift station number 2 out by the state hospital across the street. And then we are finishing up lift station number 13, which is a major lift station and pumps most of the sewage from north of San Jacinto or north of downtown to lift station number 6, which pumps to lift station number 5, which pumps to the treatment plant. So a little bit of hopscotch there, but so 2 and 13 are done. And number 3 is one that we would need to upgrade to accommodate ash connection. And then number 6 would be one we would need to accommodate to do some upgrades to handle the lift station 13 upgrades. So that takes wastewater from lift station 13. So these aren't the costs that we had, and I'll go back to that table.
I was going to say, I think we need a map because I don't think they're in chronological order throughout town either.
A map, we do have a map actually, and we did not include it in this, but oops, sorry, I must have missed it.
And when we were working on Traffic Way and we tore up the road, were we trying to limit costs at that time and put some infrastructure in that doesn't have to be replaced as we're upgrading some of these?
We did, and I know the Traffic Way we updated, upgraded and upsized that sewer pipe. We actually had conditions that it was under pressure at times, and a gravity sewer pipe should not be under pressure at any time. But we did do major improvements there a few years ago. So that's why half the road was done and then the other half was not. But lift station modifications, that top line would be for lift station 3 and lift station 6 to do some modifications to them to increase capacity.
3 and 5 or 3 and 6?
3 and 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
The report says 3 and 5, I believe.
Yeah, it would be 3 and 6.
3 and 6.
Yes.
How often do we replace lift stations or do major improvements or bring them up to accommodating of flow?
So these lift stations work in some pretty hostile environment for metal and pumps and everything else. So there's a lot of the wastewater that they're pumping is does a lot of damage to seals and metal and everything. So a lot of the guides and the hatches on these and just the components actually eventually wear out. But we usually rehab these and just change out those components, maybe do a sealing of the wet well. We try to do that every 10 to 15 years. Replacement is usually driven by a need for capacity. So if you have to put bigger pumps in there and make a bigger wet well, like we did at lift station 2 and 13, that's when we usually end up replacing those.
So you're saying on average replacements are 20, 25 years unless we need the larger size.
We rehab them or change out components on them, usually anywhere from 10 to 15 years, and then replace them on a longer cycle, somewhere in the 20 to 40-year range.
Okay. I'd ask that staff change this to indicate lift station number 3 and 6, because right now it says 3 and 5 on page 37. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Couple of questions and clarification. To be clear for the public, all costs pertaining to the sewer system have to be paid by the sewer users. In other words, the city can't use general fund money to do that. You can't charge people who have septic systems to help support the sewer system. So all costs related to the sewer system must ultimately be paid by the ratepayers who utilize the sewer system, correct?
You could use general fund dollars.
Really?
But that's really poor use of general fund dollars because
Right.
this is a utility of the city.
Right,
And
the
so-
benefits going to specific
but you-
property
you
owners.
legally could, but it's then competing with public safety and other things. And I think that those who are not hooked up to the sewer system would have grave issue with that. It's
Understood.
terrible policy,
Right.
but you
Got it.
could.
But I mean, the point being, though, that all of the cost as they add up, unfortunately, have to be distributed over the customer base. And the questions were asked and you addressed the potential of adding, more customers, either through cooperation with other agencies, but also we have an issue of expansion. As you indicated, the plant, just for capacity purposes, if we could just expand the plant by 20% or something, we could handle some future growth. But the state won't allow that. In other words, they're making us build essentially a brand new sewage treatment plant, right? And of course, it's very expensive, and past experience in Los Osos, Morro Bay, I think SLO, Paso, is all that the regional water quality out of control board isn't satisfied until, they take your $50 million project and make it a $100 million project. I mean, that's the trend, right? Is that the regulatory environment doubles or more the cost of these things. And so, but to some degree, we do want an expansion of capacity, because it would be silly to build a plant that to our exact capacity needs today. So when we do have growth, you're betting on a certain amount of growth as part of our general plan, et cetera, certain additional housing, additional commercial. We charge connection fees for new customers to sign up. Approximately, just wild ballpark guess, if you can make one, Mr. DeBar or the consultant, would be if you build a $100 million plant as a round figure, and has 30% more capacity than our current plant, how much, of that $100 million is the 30% additional capacity? And the connection fees are presumably there to help cover people utilizing that additional capacity. What, you have to kind of guess how much growth is really going to occur, because if it doesn't occur, then existing users are stuck paying for the expansion, right? Even though that's not our intent, that's not how we design the rate structure, et cetera. But would that be?
Right. And so with the design of our plan, and maybe I'll ask Dylan Wade from WSC to talk about, he's our program manager for the plan. He actually did some of the master planning for this. But currently, our plant, the expansion or that secondary treatment improvements are associated 85% with existing customers and 15%, I believe, with the growth. But I'll let Mr. Wade explain this a little more.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah, I think that would answer the question if it's that simple.
it's essentially that simple,
Okay.
where it's you just take proportionality and say, here's the estimated flows from the current users, here's the capacity that we're adding, estimating flows from future users, and then you proportion it out. So right now, our best guess is 85% for the existing users and 15% for future users.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And the 18% increase we're talking about is across the board of all of the rate classifications. And because we're not changing what constitutes an ADU, EDU, or portion of an EDU, right? So everybody's getting an 18%
That's correct.
increase based on their
Yeah,
classification.
existing
Okay.
customer.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. I think everybody else asked their questions, and I thank you for that slide, Mr. Lewis, because it does demonstrate what actions you planned on taking and like to see you take as we go forward. It also explains why we wouldn't, be trying to project a rate increase out to future years very much because we don't know. I mean, we're faced with this kind of scary story, and then you're going to do everything you can to either, through cooperation, through grants, et cetera, try to reduce the cost. So with that, I think we'll go to public comment and to see if anybody would like to speak on this agenda item. Thank you for all of you sitting through the scintillating discussion about wastewater treatment.
Good evening, Jeff Losselin. I'll lead this one off. I think our city manager has some great ideas. I do have some issues with obviously a rate increase. I don't like, as a citizen of Atascadero, having a late agenda item against the wall, that if it doesn't happen tonight, it doesn't go on the tax rolls in time. This was discussed a couple years ago, and here we are again. And 4 of you on council were here when this was discussed. So we need to fix this. Secondly, we love using comparisons and graphs, but I don't see comparisons up there showing what the rates are for other cities. We see a graph of what they pay, but you have your connection fees. Are we in line with other cities? We have the usage, what's in with other cities. I think these are important things that we should be showing. I have a commercial property. I don't know if I'm fair or not. I also am very concerned. Our residents are gracious. We passed 2 tax measures to help our city stay funded and not go into bankruptcy and be able to do things like a city up north. This is very concerning. The other part of this is let's let the cat out of the bag tonight. We know that the Atascadero Mutual Water Company, the private agency, has to also do a secondary treatment. So we're going to hit water fees as well. Sewage fees again. And in a highly debated council meeting a couple years ago on expansion projects, this council asked our director here, sorry to call you out, sir, what our capacity was for sewage capacity. We have all these projects going on in the city of Atascadero, and we find out in public tonight that we're out of capacity. That's a problem as well. Maybe we should, instead of putting fees in, we should just put a building moratorium in at this juncture. We have insurance issues in this town. We have high cost of living. Your fire insurance bills, if you haven't looked at them, are skyrocketing. Every time you turn around, we're getting massive fees. I think this should have come for us a year ago again, saying, hey, we need to up it. We gave a year break to our residents, but 18% adds up. You just said it's $100 a year per household. And the question that was asked by Council Member Newsom was, does it affect renters? Well, I'm going to tell you, heck yeah, it affects renters because I'm going to raise the rent. So it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Council. My name is Mike Zappas. I'm a citizen of Atascadero, and thank you very much for hearing us and listening to what we have to say. I just want to say a couple of things. The EDU calculation, I saw on the chart there that it was, I believe it was 75% for apartments and 50% for mobile homes, if I'm not correct. I may be wrong on that, but it's very similar to that. About 80% of the apartments in Atascadero are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So that the capacity should be similar to a mobile home or less. Mobile homes could easily, I don't know, I haven't done the study, but I will, if it's needed, find out what the occupancy is in apartments versus mobile homes, and I think they should be equal, not different on the EDU count. The second thing I'd like to say is that the timing of this could not be worse. Your merchants downtown are really struggling with the street improvements. And we have to sit through lots of meetings and listen to a lot of sob stories about why they're having a hard time and and I know it's wonderful that the city's doing it, but hitting this on the heels of, we had a 700% increase in our insurance for La Plaza, 2 blocks from the fire department with no claims. It's just the environment. So we pass that along to our merchants. We have to absorb it for our tenants, and we can't raise the rent to accommodate that kind of thing. So we're taking it. We're getting hit with all these insurance. So the insurance is already a big problem. This comes on top of merchants already struggling. So I guess one of my comments is, I'd like you to look at the timing of all this. Is the state requiring it be done this month, or can this be implemented in December instead of July, giving the merchants a chance to get on their feet? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Matt Corning, and my wife Jennifer and I are the co-owners of the A-Town Chop Shop here in downtown Atascadero. So we opened our business 2 years ago and have invested pretty much everything, our time, our savings, our hearts, into building a community-centered space in the heart of downtown. And but over the past year, the project downtown, the ECR project specifically, has been pretty devastating, limiting access to our storefront and many others. We've endured nonstop construction, limited visibility, disappearing foot traffic, and month after month of declining revenue. And through it all, there's been really no meaningful mitigation from the city, unfortunately. No rent assistance, minimal opaque marketing efforts, little to no attempt to keep businesses afloat while the streets around us are torn up. We've heard the same message again and again. There's really nothing the city can do. It's just not just unfortunate, it seems pretty negligent. And now in the middle of this hardship, we're asked to absorb a pretty significant increase in sewer and tax assessments. As a leaseor, or leasing a space downtown, we are in fact being affected by things like this. So this isn't just a bill, it's a compounding financial blow to an already struggling business. And a lot of businesses downtown made worse by the fact the system seems to be a little bit inconsistent in terms of how you calculate a lot of the cases. I've heard of a case where, a business like ours that doesn't really use that much water is, maybe being compared to something, like a single, family home where there's 3 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, laundry, kitchen, et cetera. So looking for some fairness and just more or less, just really, we want to see this downtown flourish. And but you can't revitalize a city by crushing the very little businesses that give it life. So I appreciate it. I just asked tonight, pause the sewer rate hike, initiate a fair third-party audit of how these fees are being calculated, and acknowledge and address the economic damage caused by the ECR project through real mitigation and not just words. And above all, listen to your small business community. We're the ones putting in the work day after day to make Atascadero somewhere where people want to visit, live, and invest in. We're not asking for favors, we're asking for fairness, and we're asking for a real chance to survive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for hosting the meeting tonight, Honorable Council and Mayor and staff. My name is Max Zappis. I'm a third-generation developer broker. Our company has 3 private sewer lift stations on our property, so we're intimately aware of the operating costs and upgrades with those systems. Our company manages over 500 units in town, 25 individual property owners, some of which have fixed income, are elderly, and retired. They depend on the income from their real estate investments and are being directly impacted by this increase. These increases on their property tax bills have been so drastic in the last few years that numerous property owners are reaching out to us to advocate on their behalf, which is about 40% in the last few years, and now it's proposed to be 60% approximately. Business owners likewise sign triple net leases in most cases, and they have to pay the charges you're discussing increasing tonight by over 18%. They too were given no opportunity for input and are also reaching out to us to advocate on their behalf. The vote tonight needs to be suspended until the next year for more input from the public. Owners were given no opportunity to give input. We manage about 50 commercial business units in town, and those business owners were given no opportunity for input. The fashion in which the Public Works Department has pulled the wool over the eyes of the business owners and property owners is nothing short of a shame. It took me 2 years of hounding Ryan and Nick to even discover what they're doing. Literally 2 years, and business owners are frustrated with us because we can't even tell them what they're going to have to pay next year. And now we have to tell them their rates have gone up 40% the last 2 years, and they're piling on another 18% this year. Talk about inflation. The city staff finally admitted they inaccurately and incorrectly charged almost all of the business we represent. Then they go so far as to say they cannot and will not refund those property and business owners for their incorrect charges. The solutions I'd like to propose. We need to lessen the cost and push back as much as possible on the budget these consultants are saying we have to pay. That's not true. They're literally incentivized to create budgets and seemingly necessitate more studies that aren't necessary. Those numbers are inflated and include many things we do not need to do and are not required to do. We need to grind that budget down and work on measures to lower our residents' impacts. We need to push back on the Central Coast Regional Quality Control Board. Many of the board members do not even live anywhere near Atascadero. They are wildly out of control, not so different from the notorious California Coastal Commission. We also need to work to notify the state of how insane these requirements are. Having sewer water that's drinkable is absurd. And form a subcommittee of community members and council members that advocates on our behalf of our community and pushes back against the absurd state requirements mentioned by staff tonight. In conclusion, the city and their consultants have not allowed us to share actual water usage data from our 500 plus residential and commercial units. We submeter almost all of our units, and we can't contribute that information despite asking to. The city needs to allow opportunities for business and property owners to provide input and actual data. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Any other member of the public wishing to comment? If not, we will bring it back to council for discussion. And I don't know if staff has any response. There was one question I would ask, and that is whether or not there were any, miscalculations, if you will, in terms of either business type or amounts charged. Given that the relative simplicity, one can debate how, what percentage of an EDU a particular type should be charged, but other than that, it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I think
an issue.
On some of these properties, especially commercial properties, we collect the sewer service charges based on APN to the properties. So for instance, Mr. Zappa's situation, La Plaza has many, it did have some different APNs, but there's other properties that he manages that is just one APN and has multiple businesses. Say, it's a strip mall or something like that. So it's a blended rate. It's not just like, oh, it's, this or that. It's like a number of businesses. So we actually sat down with them a number of times and went through it. And there was some of those that went up a little and some that went down. So We did balance those out, but sometimes different businesses move in. That's maybe a more intense use than the previous one. So, it's sometimes it's all based on what business comes in or comes out of those properties.
But there is a process, if you will, for people to appeal, like say, hey, my EDU is wrong, or, because this is spread out over multiple parcel numbers in my project, I don't agree with how this is calculated.
We meet with everybody that reaches out to us, and we look at their billing, and we evaluate it and sit down with them. More currently, with some of these properties, for instance, La Moda, which is a new property that just got issued a building permit, actually come up and have a comprehensive wastewater EDU calculation, because there's different multiple types of properties in there. So I've been providing that with building permits.
Okay, thank you. Now, does any member of the council have any further questions of staff as a result of the public comment? Or after that, we'll move into discussion. So actually several do, but I'll just start at that end. Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Yeah, just a question for somebody on staff over here. Mike Zappas mentioned something about being able to delay any increase. If we have a deadline, what is that deadline? What do we have to accomplish by that deadline? And if increases are going to be a result of that, is it possible to delay for some or all customers, or how can something like that be implemented or worked out? Or is it possible?
The county does, since we do levy property taxes, the county usually has a deadline of July 15-ish to have those levies into them. And so to have the, rates go into effect by that time, the county charges us $2 per APN. You can submit them later during the year, but that cost goes up to $36 per APN. I might add that I believe the taxes get collected in October timeframe and April timeframe. So not right away. They bill those separate, I believe.
Councilmember Funk?
Yeah, I want to follow up on that deferred thing. Would it be possible for us to submit now a tax that would be applicable for the second half of the year of property? Because our property taxes come in two bills. And you pay one in, October by early December, and another one in, February to April. So could we, if we chose to submit this one so that it is effective with the second of the two bills and not the first?
I believe, and I'm not sure exactly, but we can find out. But my belief is that if you, whatever you levy the property tax, it's going to be divided by two, unless you do a separate one for the second half, that $36 later in the year. So you could submit something later for the second half, but that's going to cost $36 per APN versus $2 per APN. So it will cost more. But if you submit it now or by the July 15th timeframe, they'll just, I believe, split it in half with each of those two collections.
Okay. Is there, so effectively, really we have to do it all year or not? Is it feasible to take an entirely different route? Since the biggest concerns we're hearing tonight, of course, are the compounding effect of this on top of the El Camino Real work. For our downtown businesses. That's a small subset. Would it be possible as to do something to mitigate impact and support for those businesses that have this compounding challenge to help keep them afloat until the profitability, the improved profitability that'll come with this project starts to kick in
So we're talking nine, and I know every dollar is important, and I'm not sure how much rents were raised, but we're talking $9 to about $30 a month. So I get that's $30, but so we're talking 300 something dollars on the year. So if we postpone 6 months, that's $180 to a downtown business, which is still $180, but that's what we're talking about. So when we talk about all the other issues and insurance and other things, again, I'm not sure what rents were raised, but our before you is $9 to 36. If we postpone, that is certainly something the council could do that doesn't address the financial issue on the back end. It will be a more severe increase later. You have to build a new wastewater plant. You must meet these regulatory issues. And so if we kick the can, as we had for 25 years, the project doesn't go away. So I think that's it. And is it easier then to increase by 30% next year as opposed to 18.5 this year? Those are the policy struggles that we have to contend with. And again, I understand that downtown has been challenging. We're about done, and we're talking $9 to $35. And if the council wants to talk about, is there a way we can find $35 for the next 3 months for downtown businesses that are struggling? I can talk with the staff about that, if that's what we're talking about.
But it would also be noteworthy that downtown businesses would not have, and anybody else is actually not going to have to lay out the cash for this rate increase until that first property tax is due. And I think that you can wait as late as like the 1st of December to pay that. So while we're making that decision now, the cash flow impact is a ways out, and we will be done and enjoying and celebrating the amazing effects of ECR by the time this thing gets hit, right?
I think that's a good point. The cash flow impact doesn't impact till December. What individuals choose to do with their rents and their tenants is a different story, but yes, that is true.
Okay, and then since there was a request for greater comparative data, and we do have somebody who can tell us something about that, I would ask our consultant to come up and talk a little, just not extensively, but can you give us a summary of this $100 million treatment plant cost that we're looking at here versus what the costs have been for some of the nearby communities or are looking it to be?
Yeah, if we pull up the slide that has the various communities and kind of the rate comparison, I think it's informative. Essentially, you can look at the current rates of agencies in our county, and those with the highest rates are the ones that are in process or just recently completed their wastewater treatment plant upgrades. It's almost a direct relationship. So your monthly cost is primarily driven by the capital component. So that slide right there. San Miguel CSD, we are the district engineer for them. They've purchased their wastewater treatment plant equipment and will be finalizing their rates probably later this year as they move into construction on their wastewater treatment upgrades. They're going from a pond to an MBR. So similar issues for them that you guys are facing. The rate that they have in place right now of just, I think it's 108 is the exact number per month, is insufficient. So they will be increasing this year as they struggle to complete their project. Morro Bay completed their upgrades in January of 2023. They had a $165 million program. Their flows are about half of what you guys are planning for. But they had a lot of costs because they moved from where they were previously to a whole new site and had all the infrastructure associated with it. So your costs on a unit basis will be cheaper than Morro Bay's. Los Osos completed their facilities. I want to say that was like 2015. Don't quote me on that date because that's from memory and it was 10 years ago. I originally moved to the area to build the first iteration of that project that got stopped. And so that was the most recent. Cambria is working through some minor upgrades right now. I don't know well enough to speak to their rates. San Luis Obispo is wrapping up their wharf program. They did not have to replace all of their facilities, so they just were able to pick and choose and add some new components in and keep some of their old components and rehabilitate them. So their recent upgrades are not apples to yours. So what I did as part of this process is I went through, spoke with most of the current projects and looked from Greenfield to Santa Maria at all the projects and developed a cost curve. So basically, how many dollars per gallon does it cost to build a wastewater treatment plant in our area in the last 10 years? And then I escalated those costs to kind of come up with and back check our number that we're getting you. So that's why we have a pretty high degree of confidence that the $100 million range is, for the level of planning we're at, is reasonably accurate.
Okay, and with the analysis that you've done, in all of that, I heard one number for what a plant costs. The Morro Bay being 165 million because they had to move to a new site.
Yep.
And ours is 100 million because we're having to adopt a whole new technology, but we don't have to change sites.
Correct.
And SLO is something less than ours.
Yes.
Can you give me any other numbers that compare to the $100 million that we're looking at?
SLO's project, there again, this is from memory, and they bid that in 2018 or something like that, was about $115 million, I want to say, was their upgrades. Santa Maria is under the same general order that you are, R3 2020-0020. And they are looking at a somewhere between $500 to $600 million upgrade to their facility because their flows are so much higher. So the smaller the plant, the higher the cost per unit of treatment. So the Cayucas recently completed their facilities. Their rates aren't shown on here. They're at $99 a month. They completed their facilities in 2020, and that was overall about a $35 million program. That was my project. I designed that. So that's another data point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Newsom.
How many of these projects did you estimate for?
Did I estimate for?
How many of these projects did you participate in there?
Oh, yeah. In one way or another, many of them. So San Miguel CSD, my firm is the district engineer. So I get involved kind of loosely from that perspective. Morro Bay, I used to manage their utilities. So I was leading their previous wastewater project before I left in 2012. So I'm fairly familiar with that facility. Like I said, I worked on the Los Osos, the first round, not the second round. San Luis Obispo, we were the program managers for that facility. And then worked on the Heritage Ranch project as well. They're at 65 now and headed to over 100, probably between 105 and $110 a month for their upgrades that are coming.
And your company, or the company that you're with, also did our previous data analysis?
Yeah,
like 7 years ago when we did it?
No, not that far back. So we were brought on to look at alternatives for this facility. That was the first task that we completed for Atascadero. We completed that work in 2022.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And it says to say you weren't doing the crunching the numbers for the 5-year series of increases we did.
No, we
Got it.
didn't. I don't typically do rate work.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to have some discussion on this. I would suggest, City Manager, you add to your list of things to do, to seek out our state legislators. I know it's a tough thing to do in the California regulatory environment, but it is so absurd that we have these boards that just keep driving up the cost to untenable levels, for homeowners, really, and for businesses. And it's just so frustrating that you have, a functioning plant. Now they say, well, you can't do that anymore. You need to build a whole new plant. But you can see that what we're faced with is not new. We're not unique. We're not being, in a sense, picked on worse than other jurisdictions, even though it feels like that sometimes. It's especially frustrating if they require a higher standard of us than somebody downstream or upstream. That's really frustrating. But I mean, that's, what we're faced with, is that nowadays you build a new sewage treatment plant, you're lucky to get away with less than 100 million. And that's why we want you to do the, potential cost sharing with other jurisdictions, et cetera. Whether it's neighbor community to the north or the state hospital or what have you, there's things there that hopefully can be done to save money. As far as, for myself, the issue raised by Councilmember Funk, though, in terms of, relief for downtown businesses, to me, it's very, it would be very bad policy to start singling out specific types of users for rate relief. If we want to do something for small businesses, like there was a shop local program and these other types of things, that's where we want to try to help small businesses, not in very selective rate relief for, individual things. And, when you set up a property tax bill, you get your property tax bill and it's due technically November 1st, but you have till December 10th to pay it. And then it's due February 1st and you have until April 10th to pay it. It's set for the whole year. That's why the July 15th, and that's why it's such a big deal to add on something later. And if you were trying to delay it for 6 months, you really wouldn't be delaying it for 6 months at all. You essentially just would be charging them half of the cost over the course of the year. You would make a decision to charge them half of this rate increase for the year. And I just, as frustrating as it is, I think that bar graph is very informative when you're looking at what other communities have to pay. And to be, frank with our residents who are going to be frustrated by this, is we spent 25 years and we didn't raise the rates. That was darn near, if there was any irresponsibility, that was the irresponsible action, was to never raise rates for 25 years, watch your reserves plummet to the point of, either not being able to sustain the system. And you've got to start building some reserves if you want to have any chance of financing a system at a decent rate. And this is, very hard thing. And the state makes it worse on every step of the way. But as frustrating as it is, I myself would have to vote, for this, because I see not doing this is not the responsible thing to do. But I want to hear from my colleagues, and then we'll proceed to some form of a motion. So, Councilmember Newsom.
It is very challenging. 4 of us up here are business owners. Yes, we are the property owners that also pay that bill. We choose as property owners not to pass that down to our tenants because we value the ability that they're going to pay those rents that we agreed to for a year, and we shoulder that burden. It is painful to look at my property tax bill. I did open it up, see what's on there. I look at that and I see 3 bonds along with an Atascadero sewer charge. I know that there's new bonds that are going on there with the new rate. I also know that over the years, when I have acquired a property, I have had supplemental that is painful, which is 3 to 4 times what we budget for. So having to budget is really hard, and it's hard to figure out what gets cut in your life or what gets cut out of your business operations to be able to pay those taxes. We don't sit up here because we have an easy choice to be able to raise taxes for everybody. Most of us are in the same shoes as those that sit in the audience. And that's why we sit up here, is to argue for what's right and what's wrong. We were given the task 5 years ago to have this conversation, to argue that we should have raised those rates 25 years ago. And they put it on our shoulders to do that. And we chose to spread it out over a certain smaller proportional amount to be able to cover our cost of living. We know it's tough. But I also understand that if we don't do this, our city is going to be out 900,000. And I know that's crazy for us to think both sides, because I have to pay into something that we haven't been saving for. But I do ask that our city be responsible in the fact of how they spend that money when they do open the streets like Traffic Way, that they are putting extra infrastructure and making those changes for the future 20 years down the line, so that everybody else that lives and work here gets some sense of relief in knowing that we're not haphazardly spending this money. And so I'm torn with, wanting to go out there and say, hey, it'd be nice to do public outreach even more and split it in half. I don't know, as a council member, I know that I could say, I would like you to split it in half because I would at least like to have people make it. We just recovered from COVID. I feel like we're starting to get momentum. I don't want everybody to start to close their doors because we say that $9 is affordable. Well, when I look at my bill, I'm paying $600 for just this one property. That's expensive for me. So what do I cut out? So I would say 18% seems a little steep. I don't know what we can do as a council and ask if we can do a lesser amount. Can we still look at research on study analysis? I'd like to bring back the previous rate analysis and make a comparison to where we are, because I don't like to ask those in our audience or anybody in town to sacrifice something out of their own personal life just to be able to cover something that we haven't saved for as a city. We've been really savvy with our dollars, but I don't see spending $173 million for a replacement. That is just not what we can afford as a city. And when you guys are in Sacramento, I'm sorry I can't go, but I would like you to say that's not fair to us as a community. We're a rural community. We don't have 173. We barely can afford to pay the consultants to tell us that we have to pass this along. So what do? Gray water. What are the things that we can do locally that makes us scrappy, that's got us through the tough times? Because we don't have all the TOT. So I want to make sure that we're doing what we can to represent the business owners and the property owners. Some of us are on septic, but we have our own, costs and burden that are coming with the water districts and those bonds and everything else that we're having to pay for because everybody keeps asking for more money. So I ask that we try to make it a little more affordable if possible.
All right, thank you. I'll just keep going from this side. Councilmember Funk.
Sure. So this really stinks to be in this situation. And I would say more colorfully that, but yes, respect that this is a public and family environment. That we are in this position because previous members of this council dug this community into a huge hole and created an expectation that was not sustainable. And further, we're in this situation because the information that we had, when we looked at having to start raising sewer increases every year for 5 years straight at 15% a year, that we were looking initially at, when we first started looking at a $30 million sewer plant, then we're looking at a $70 million sewer plant. And now all of a sudden we're looking at a $100 million sewer plant plus, oops, we have this other problem with our old sewer pipes and lift stations. And even the two worst things of that are going to be another 73 million. Well, we're talking, this is almost 6 times the cost of our public safety facilities upgrade. This is why I have spent so much time bending your ears in the back, because this could break the integrity of our community and pit people against one another. We can't, the connection fees that we might have to consider. The true cost of connecting, if we have to have, such a expensive system, could be something that keeps new businesses from taking advantage of all of the capacities we're working hard to invest as a community to create profitable opportunities for people to bring in new businesses and run new businesses and carry forward the business that they have. So I really hate being in this hole. And I know that it's not, and part of it is the surprise to us. We can't do a longer process to the community because we got to put something up. Oops, there's another 7,300 or 100 million is a real yikes. That being said, we've got, as a community, we have to be able to handle our human waste. We can't not do that. And we can't not pay the costs that, oh, whatever the costs are ultimately going to be. It can't not happen that we just don't, we can't just say, oops, well, good luck with that and we'll pay the fines. No, that's gross. And it's also even more costly. So I'm inclined, given that we have, the people won't actually have to pay this until, December 10th, I guess, is Mayor was saying. It gives everybody a little bit of breathing room to know that it's coming. And plan for it as best anybody can. I'm inclined to support this. I draw you back to the commitments. I mean, for me, my bottom line is I want to know that the city's going to do everything possible to reduce the cost, to share it with other people, to get the feds or somebody else to kick up some of them, and the state to kick up some of the money. And I'm going to go with you to Sacramento starting tonight to go fight for that. To get whatever regulatory relief we can try to get. I think it is patently ridiculous that we're being expected to have dissolved salt levels coming out of the back end of our wastewater treatment system that are lower than the Atascadero Mutual Water Company is allowed to deliver it to our taps. That's just nuts. Now, I understand that's not a big driver of the cost of this thing, but, we need to, to fight, as my colleagues have also been saying, to fight that. And also to finance things to make sure that we are, distributing those costs fairly. And to be looking at what can we do to help, at the margins, those folks that, for whom, we're, pushing them into just, it's a bridge too far. So that being said, I'm inclined to go ahead and support this rate increase and use the Prop 218 process to get feedback from our community, because there is that opportunity. But I'm also going to really look for delivery on some of these things before I'm going to do another one next year.
Thank you. Would you like to make a motion and then we'll discuss the motion and we'll discuss the motion and allow council members Peak and Darius to comment? Or do you want to hold off?
I'll hold off and let
Okay,
the other two
got it.
comment.
All right, then let's proceed. And by the way, thank you for that last specific example of how absurd some of these requirements are, to where you have to put water back into the riverbed that's, has a lower level of salts than what the water company can pump out and deliver to your house. I mean, that's the extent of the absurdity that agencies have to deal with these regulatory bodies. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Darius.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat most of what I already said. I certainly agree with my colleagues, but as was stated by the city manager, this issue unfortunately is not going to go away. It's only going to get more expensive the longer we wait. I was thinking, well, it's a shame that the rate increases were ignored for so many years, and now the current five of us are the ones that have to make the difficult decision. And I wonder if the rates were increased on a regular basis, the way maybe other communities did over this last 25 years. Right now, it shows we're in the bottom third of the cost to each parcel. I wonder where we would be if these rates had happened over the 25 years. Would we be in the top third? If so, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Hopefully the reserves will be full enough to where we can just say, hey, we need a new system, and we're going to go ahead and do that. I think it would have been a lot easier if the rate, and we're down at $48, $50. If we were sitting at $75 because of the rates over the last 25 years, probably nobody would be complaining because that's what we would be used to. But now we're bumping it up significantly in a short amount of time, and that does seem painful, and it's unfortunate. This is going to be a huge, expensive project, but it's one of our most important utilities, and it has to be done, and it's got to be paid for one way or another. So yeah, I am inclined to also support this as well. And we are unfortunately in a time where this five has to make that decision. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Councilmember Peak.
I guess the only other comments I have are it puts me in a very impossible position. I'm the freshman here on the council. I'm also multiple business owner. I'm a landlord. That doesn't mean that I'm going to raise rates every time there's any sort of, I mean, we had the school bond measure. I didn't raise rents right away, but it was, $40 per $100,000 assessed value. If you have multiple properties here, hits you hard, right? And triple net's a real thing. And, a lot of commercial tenants here in Atascadero pay the triple net. And so they're going to burden the cost of that as well in larger buildings, restaurants, ones that are more than one EDU. I'm really looking forward to having a cohort of residents, hopefully business owners and commercial tenants that are going to be impacted by this increase. I really think that the cost of this project is higher. I mean, anything with government build, anything with government builds is going to be more expensive than a private entity. It's a massive number, and like other colleagues have said, it's just hard to swallow the fact that could even be possible for us to impose on our citizens. I'm really looking forward to, like I said, what can come up with people that come forward that want to be on some sort of committee, whatever you're calling it, cohort committee. I'm just not, as a representative of this business community, I'm not 100% on this. So I just don't know if it's something that I'll never get behind, or it's something I'm not behind today, or if it's something, it's a tough pill to swallow. And it's not something a decision I'm making lightly. I'm not sure I'm 100% on it on this vote today.
Thank you. And I would say none of us is 100% behind this. But I think either Mayor Pro Tem Dares or Councilmember Funk put it succinctly or put it clearly that, the responsibility falls to us. If we don't do this, I think we're putting ourselves in for more trouble. We're doing this as a one-year thing. We're being transparent that there's a further increase expected down the road, but we want to see what we can do, regulatory relief, other participants, grant funding, et cetera, to try to reduce the ultimate cost of this. But if we don't take this action this evening, I think it actually sets us back and would likely cost us more in the long run. With that, I'm not going to put any of my colleagues on the spot. I will make a motion that we approve.
Charles.
Go ahead. We can discuss the motion. Let me go ahead and make the motion. I will make the motion that we adopt staff's recommendation to direct staff to administer the 218 process and to set a public hearing date of June 10th, 2025 for the council's consideration of the proposed sewer service rate increase. So do I have a second on that?
I'll take my Pepto-Bismol and second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's discuss the item. Go ahead, Councilmember Peak.
It's not lost on me that it could end up costing more. I'm just wondering if the benefit to the citizens and the business community is willing to swallow the pill to say, maybe it'll cost more, but let's try our darndest to try to figure this out before we vote on it again, or before we raise it 18%. That's all I'm saying. It could cost us more, but business is speculation. A lot of times you're speculating, but when you speculate on something like this, then you put your best foot forward and try to figure it out. And, the most concerned people, in town, I would greatly encourage them to get involved in this committee to figure out a good solution for this, and help steer the decision. I'm just thinking, it could cost us more, and if I'm wrong and I'm just like, and everyone's, is negatively impacted and everyone comes with me pitchforks and whatnot, I think I'd rather have listened to not just people in the room, but people I've talked to last few days in business community, because they know that's I'm part of them, that maybe it's worth seeing if we can figure out something else rather than this and take the brunt of whatever the state does to us in the year. I just don't know if the cost benefit or if the risk might be worth it. And if it's, I don't know, I do know it's not lost on me that it might cost us more money, but I just, there's always a solution for something out there. There's always a deal to be made.
May I share quickly to kind of help with this? As I've shared, this doesn't fix the situation. We must engage our business community. We must engage our community to earn trust and hear options and have them have ownership of their sewer system as well for it to continue to work and be healthy for our community. We have to engage them. And so that's why I was sharing, who knows what you'll do next year? Who knows what you'll do the year after that? What I do know is we need to find some money, find some partners, and engage our community and have the dialogue, council member, that you're asking for. If we don't move forward tonight, this money is still needed. So we'll further erode the fund balance and be in a greater financial situation next year. And then if we don't do anything the next year, I'll probably be asking you to sell the system. I mean, that's where we're headed. And so I think I want to implore the council that we are buying time. This does allow us to engage on the next increase and the next, what it looks like and whether we do it or not. And were we successful with the state of California this year or not? Did we get into position for some grant money? Do we better understand how we charge rates? We'll know a lot of that a year from now. And so this isn't the end all rate increase by any means. We need additional resources to do what we need to do. So I hear you. And this is a journey. We're trying to right a ship that was an issue years ago. And so this at least gives us some footing so we're not losing time and facing further financial stress to have those conversations. They must occur.
And I would, just reiterate though that, I mean, look at the graph. We are still on the low end. Think about people in San Miguel, which is definitely not as wealthy of a community in terms of average household incomes as Atascadero, paying over $100 a month right now. Okay. This is, as frustrating as it is not outrageous. I mean, I would stand before anybody and say, this is not outrageous. You gotta pay to flush. There's no free lunch. And many times when city councils are faced with these, these rate increase things, it's like, I don't hear realistic alternatives. And I do have confidence in, staff that Mr. Lewis has been through this kind of thing before, whether it's, fire stations or whatever. He's been through it here. He's been through it in Pismo Beach. He is good at pursuing other money. He's good at pursuing legislative relief, although I as frustrating as that it is, I don't hold out high hopes for that one, but I want to pursue it. But, I just feel that unfortunately, we're the five sitting here. This is something we have to do. And if we have to take the slings and arrows, that's what we got elected for, to make responsible decisions. And if we take, if we got to take the heat, we got to take the heat. So, I totally appreciate those comments, but I think, that's what staff is going to do. They're going to, get other people involved, see what else we can come up with in terms of ideas for reducing costs, addressing any perceived inequities in how EDUs are calculated, et cetera, which I think is all important things to do. But I have confidence we'll do that. And so any further discussion, I'd like to call the roll. Okay, let's go ahead and call the roll on the motion.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak,
No.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Bobo.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1 with Councilmember Peak voting no.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to move on to item B2, which is discussion of our 2025 to 27 work plan approval. And this, came out partly out of our strategic planning and goal setting workshop. And we'll turn this discussion over to City Manager, Mr. Jim Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. We had a very robust conversation back on February 21st of 2025. The city has a long history of setting goals. Goals are important to have a deep rudder on the ship. So as these issues come about, we know where we're headed as a council. We, in a community, we can have strong budget and strong priorities. And so during that date, you did set 3 strategic priorities: economic and community. And I think I have those up here on the presentation. If we can move to the next slide. So that's when we establish our goals. Next slide, please. You did set these 3 strategic priorities as the policymakers for our community. We would focus on economic and community vibrancy, fiscal and infrastructure efficiency and sustainability, and ensuring public safety and providing exceptional city services. And so you discussed some key focus areas. I won't read them to you, but based on that, I'll go to the next slide. The staff, executive team has spent a full day working through and looking at much of the resources we're working on, the staff time that we have engaged, projects that are carrying into the next year, and things that were priorities to you. And we looked at what really aligned with your strategic priorities and the pressing needs of our community. And so before you tonight is a work plan that is 3 pages. I think we really tried to address all the issues that have been brought up, but yet have a work plan that was easy to communicate. You can see it in 3 pages. It's easy for staff to manage towards. And I think it is a very solid work plan with lots of work. I'm asking for you to endorse this work plan this evening, and this will inform us to craft the budget that you'll be seeing in June. So our recommendation is that you approve the work plan before you. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Does any member of the council have questions for the city manager? Councilmember Newsom.
So actually more of well, one question. How did you get it to fit all onto 3 pages? Because I thought we were really ambitious.
I told the staff it shouldn't be longer than 3 pages.
Did you change font size?
Thank you.
You didn't resort to a smaller font either. Okay, if no further questions, this is for us to review and approve. I want to open it up to public comment. Oh, you know,
I do have a couple of edits to
Okay.
suggest.
go ahead.
But, but go ahead and do public comment and then
Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and proceed out to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on this item, please approach the podium. Okay, seeing none, we will bring it back to council. Councilmember
Okay.
Funk.
I have 3 editing requests. One is, given the discussion that we just had, the item that says that mentions the wastewater, the WRF, water reclamation facility as a goal should also should be expanded to include the wastewater collection system as a priority. I don't think anybody will object to that being a BFD right now. And then under public safety on the second bullet, it mentions partnering with nonprofits. I would ask to add the county to that item. We should be on the ensuring public safety. This is the last page of the agenda packet, the second bullet, where it talks about serving the homeless and the part that we should continue to reduce negative impacts associated with homelessness and partner with nonprofits that serve the homeless community. And I ask that we add the county and nonprofits on that item, and hold them accountable for doing their bit. And then on the very last bullet of this, I've just asked that the acronyms be spelled out. We've got EOP, LHMP, CWPP, no.
I think those are all reasonable to the staff. So what I added is after wastewater treatment plant, added and collection system. And that second bullet, associate with homelessness and partner with the county and nonprofits serving the homeless community, and then spelling out the acronyms. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any comments on the left here? All right, then we just need a motion to essentially approve the work plan as with the 3 suggested changes by Councilmember Funk. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, great. We have a motion by Councilmember Newsom, a second by Councilmember Funk. A roll call, please.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Borvo.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that concludes our regular agenda items. We will proceed to council announcements and committee reports. I will start on my right with Councilmember Newsom.
I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Funk?
I've got notes here someplace. But let's see, we are about to head off to the Councilmember Daris, Councilmember Peak, and myself, and the city manager Lewis are all heading up to Sacramento tonight to participate for the rest of the week in the League of California Cities City Leaders Summit, and go after them trying to get some support on some of the issues we've just been discussing tonight and other critical objectives. So that's coming up. I attended the executive committee of the Homeless Services Oversight Council. And part of what we did was we processed input from a half-day workshop where we looked at what's the funding picture looking like for homeless services. And there will be a very significant drop in homeless services, in part because right now, 57% of the money is one-time money. And that one-time money is dropping significantly. Much of that some of that comes from the state, but we also had COVID-related monies that are now have now moved through the system and been spent, and don't have those resources. We also had some one-time money that way for housing projects and things that we're not expecting to get repeated. So there was a big emphasis as people looked at prioritization on making sure we can continue to operate the resources that we have added, because we went into this period, including the 2022 countywide plan, with very low in terms of shelter beds or ways to get places for people to go when we don't want them to be living in the creek and the riverbed. And we have added some capacity. We are shifting there's also recognition that all of the major homeless services shelter providers are now featuring 90-day programs that have a much higher success rate in getting people into permanent housing and having them ready to sustain themselves in permanent housing. The typical success rate on programs around the state for night-by-night shelter, which is what Forty Prado used to be and what ECHO was originally, very in its early years, is 8 to 10%. And ECHO is getting somewhere between close to 60% of their residents placed into permanent housing. And the other programs, 5 Cities is getting similar success in their cabins programs. And Forty Prado has now Capsule has now moved a lot of its beds to the 90-day program and is starting to get really good results with that. So real emphasis on looking to what delivers results, and prioritization on trying to sustain the mix of housing and services and permanent supportive housing that creates spaces for people to move to from shelters or other situations.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you. Yeah, as stated, League of Cities coming up for the next couple of days. Other than that, APCD met last week in a special meeting. Gary Willie, the CEO, is retiring at the end of the year. So we met with 3 candidates that made the short list from a selection committee and made our selection to replace him. Negotiations are continuing, and I think this will be inked within the coming weeks. So then that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Peak.
Yeah, no committee meetings. Looking forward to going up to Sacramento this evening. Very excited about what the agenda looks like. I met with the Firefighters Association earlier this week, and that was awesome. That was the first time I met with them. About 6 or 7 firefighters and a couple of retirees were there having coffee just by chance as well. So got to know a lot of what they do, what their association is looking for, what their goals are, and it was just nice to touch base all around. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned, 3 of my colleagues are traveling to Sacramento this evening along with the city manager. And so I'm going to get them on the road as soon as possible. I will just mention that IWMA, Integrated Waste Management Authority, we met and had a discussion. We Our executive director, Mr. Peter Cron, was scheduled to retire on April 17th, but he's agreed to extend till May 31st. We will be interviewing candidates with a number of applicants. I think it's 11 total that'll be screened, and we will be interviewing them on May 15th and hopefully making a selection by May 16th. So that's where that's going. I also should have mentioned earlier that this evening at 5:30, we had a ceremony on the steps of City Hall in which the police department presented an award to the family of Jose Gutierrez, who was tragically killed in a hit and run accident, but that Jose in his last moments saved his friend by, yelling him for saying to get out of the way, even though he could not save himself. So the police department presented him with a life-saving award. And that was a moving ceremony, and we appreciated that his family and a very large turnout of citizens was there to pay their respects and honor Jose. Okay, with that, anybody have any individual terminations? Nope. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting and let you get your safe travels to Sacramento.